Hello and welcome to how to make an amp sim sound like a real amp. The guitar I'm using in today's video is this beautiful fleur-de-lis indie Les Paul. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little about the analog chain that I've got going on in this video. So I've got the indie Les Paul going into my Boss NS2 noise suppressor, then going into the Boss TU3 tuner, then after that going into the Boss Blues driver, which is a Wazacraft version, and then after that going into the Amp1 Mercury edition amplifier, and then after that into a digital cabinet impulse response. Okay, so I'm in Reaper, and first of all I'm going to show you how I have this all set up. So on the first track here I have the analog Amp1 Mercury, and that is with the chain that I have mentioned earlier in the video. And then the next channel down, I should mention that on this channel here, on the Mercury, I have it on the modern channel. So you can think of something like a Soldano, something along those lines, a modern metal amp. Next one down, next track down, I have it on the clean channel on the Amp1, but I'm using the Blues driver, the Boss Blues driver Wazacraft pedal, and I've got it on a fairly high gain setting to drive it quite hard, so that we kind of get into this kind of region of a modern metal sound. Next one down, as you can see via the waveform, these are both amp sims. Check out the waveform difference between those two. You see how compressed these two are. They're very similar all the way through. There's not too much in the way of dynamics. There are some, but not a lot. Here there are a lot of dynamics on both of these tracks. And the reason for that is that when you're using an amp sim, for those of you who are new to this, you are actually tracking a clean signal. So if I were to take the amp sim out, okay, so this is the amp sim I'm using, and I've got my own setting that I've made here. If I were to take this out, then you would just hear a clean guitar. There would be no effect on it. Okay, so that's why that waveform looks the way it is for those of you who are new to recording. The same likewise goes for this one. I have a different amp sim on here, so just to check this one out again, this is the Gojira amp sim. Then below, just for comparison, I have a free amp sim on here. So this one here, the Lecto Purin's plugin. This has been out for years and years. As you're about to hear later in the video, it can still keep up with the big boys. And I also have it on high sampling, oversampling, just to take away any aliasing. Now we've got that out of the way, I'm going to play through one each, one at a time. Then later on I've actually created a little song, just an 8-bar song with some bass guitar, which is tracked here. Again, this is with a sim, so I'm actually using this one here. And then I have some drums going on. Okay, so let's move forward on to the sounds. Great, so we heard all 4 tracks there. One thing I haven't told you yet is that I'm actually using the same cabinet with all 4 tracks. And just to show you that that is correct, I'll go through each one. This is on the amp one, so I've taken out the amp because we're using an analog amp here. There is no pre-EQ. I'm using a 421 and a 160 mic and a slight hint of reverb. That is on the amp 1. On the blues driver track, we've got the same thing going on. No amp, as I'm going through the amp 1 and using the blues driver in front of it. No EQ in front. Then the same mic setup, 421 and a 160, and the same reverb. On to the first amp sim. So we have the amp sim instantiated here, as we're not using an analog amp. Just have a quick look at the settings I've got going on. I have no pedals in front of these, okay, so nothing's going on, it's just purely the amp. Very importantly, and this is the trick to helping an amp sim sound similar to a real amp. You know, you can get very close if you do the right things. And in this instance, I am using the EQ before. Now, if you have a quick look at what's going on, I've got these 3 sliders pushed at 1.5 decibels at 125 Hz, 250 and 500. And then at the end, I have taken down 8 kilohertz, 16k. Taken those right down, because with guitars you don't get a lot of high-end real guitar amps. There's not a lot of high-end information there, so you don't really need it. This is part of the trick to helping amp sims sound similar to real amps. Then we have exactly the same mics going on, 421 and 160, the same reverb. Then on the final track I have the Lecto, and I have it on the red channel, which is more the hot channel. I've got it on a modern sound, and I've matched the settings to the previous amp sim. And then after that, again, taken this amp out because I'm using the other amp sim, but what I've done is I've used exactly the same setting here as I did on the previous amp sim. The same mics, same cabinet, and same reverb. So all I've done really with the amp sims is just to include an EQ beforehand, before the speakers and the cabinet and the microphones. Okay, so we've listened to all 4 tracks, and even though all 4 tracks have the same cab, IR, microphones and such like, they still sound different. And the reason behind that is that even though I'm using the same guitar, each amp, whether it be analog or an amp sim, will have its own character. You have to remember that when tracking, you're looking for a particular flavour, whether it be a clean setting or, as in this case, a heavily distorted setting. Know what you want, know the sound that you're going to go for. The big difference will be, and always will be, the cabinet and the microphones, or the impulse responses, as is the case in this video. They will always make the big difference. Remember that all amps, whether they be real amps or amp sims, they will have their own character. If you're enjoying watching this video, please consider smashing that like button and subscribing to my channel so that I can keep on bringing this free content. And that is why we choose particular amps. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to play the little song that I've recorded here. We're going to include some bass guitar and drums along with the guitars. The guitars are going to be hard panned left and right in pairs, and I'm going to start off with the 2 analog tracks, so the amp 1 on the modern setting and the Boss Blues driver, and then I will keep the amp 1 in. I'll match it up with the other 2 tracks So we'll start off with the Boss Blues driver, then we'll move down to the first amp sim with the amp 1, and then we'll move down to the second amp sim with the amp 1, all hard panned left and right. We'll see how that fits into the context of the song. Now, I have done no mixing whatsoever, so it is purely the sound of the guitars. The bass is not mixed either, and neither of the drums. This is just the sound at source. I think you might be quite surprised at how it sounds. It sounds like a mixed song almost. Obviously, you're going to take out some low end with the guitar so that the bass will come through a bit more. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon. Sabs out.